Howdy, folks. Welcome to the PodCAST Iron. My name is Laura Mullen Vermilia, and on this podcast, I interview members of the cast iron art community in order to inspire, educate, and spread ideas about iron casting and cast iron art. I'm very excited to introduce Ira Hill as today's guest on the show. I'm sure many of you already know Ira since he's been a positive force in our cast iron art community for years. But for those of you who don't know him yet, I'm excited for you to get a chance to do so now through this interview. Ira, thank you for agreeing to come on the show and for being so willing to share your story with us. Hearing more in depth about your travels has been so very interesting, and I've really enjoyed learning how your love for iron casting has shaped your life. I've always looked up to you, found your presence comforting, and your attitude uplifting. But after our chat, my opinion of you is definitely to the next level. The PodCAST Iron Show is sponsored in part by supporters on Patreon, and this episode is brought to you by our top supporter, Sloss Metal Arts, which is a national center for iron casting and metal art. For more information about the Sloss Metal Art program, please visit their website, which is slossmetalarts.com, where you can learn more about the programs that they're offering and their upcoming events. Now, for all of you listening or watching, thanks so much for tuning in, and please enjoy. Ira Hill, welcome to the PodCAST Iron. Thank you so much for letting me interview you, and thanks for being on the show.
Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I've been thinking about it all week.
I've been really excited about this too, and we'll talk about that more in the after show. But let's just get this show on the road. And my first question for you is, well, who the hell are you anyways?
Who are you? Do you know who I am? It's a good question. That goes back a long ways with some folks, some friends about, you know who I am? Because we all think we're somebody. But me, myself, Robert Ira Hill, I was born in Indiana, Midwesterner, my whole life up until college. But we'll start with the early life. Grew up on a farm, much like many of the other practitioners of iron. My parents were educators. They were both teachers and administrators at the high school I went to. And but we had cattle and we had crops, and it wasn't. I couldn't quite tell. My dad, he grew up in that house. His mom grew up in that house. I actually have the deed to when the land was deeded to the family in the house. But he decided we were going to have animals just for the sake of having animals. Not because we needed to, not because what we did, but you know what? I had to get up and clean out the stalls, son. You got to get up and clean out the stalls. So, work was a big aspect of my life from a very young age. Maybe it's a holdover from the boomer pedigree that, the boomers raised hippies, and then they raised Gen X, and you're gonna do what we did, and we're gonna work. And so we did a lot of work. So much so that there were, I would say that I didn't say this. Work is more fun than fun. Yeah, that's my granddad. Work is more fun than fun. Okay, so let's just get back to work, right? And it consisted of, taking care of animals, mending fences, painting fences. We had like 600 yards of whiteboard fence around our property. So my mom has a photo of me at about 10 years old, scraping fence, painting fence. Like, it was just, there was always something to do. And that went on throughout high school. And while I was in high school, I didn't do any art. My folks were educators. I played music. I was in the band and played saxophone and the guitar and did musical things, but art wasn't part of the program because it was, calculus, chemistry, physics. Like, you're going to college, but I want to go to shop class. No. okay.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of choice, and that of course led to the usual rubs between parents and teenagers. And so when I got to be 18 and it was time to go, I was like, I'm out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to go to the University of Alabama for my undergrad degree. Mostly because I had nowhere else to go. I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted out.
Mm-hmm.
And so my aunt and uncle taught at the university. And so I visited a couple of times and I was like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So that's where I went. What are you going to do there? I don't know. I'm just going to go. And so from there, I enrolled in taking chemical engineering courses. And I did that about 2 semesters and couldn't pass the differential equations. Didn't have the math chops and batted a really low GPA that sophomore year. Like had way too much fun, did not do any school. And much like many of your other artists that you've interviewed, it was photography that attracted me to the art department. I had done some in high school, a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I'll take a summer class and had a great experience, and then took another class and got a scholarship. And it's like, hey, I'm going to do art.
Yeah.
My folks are like, well, your grades have improved. Okay, that's good. What are you going to do with that? I'm like, I don't know, but it'll be good. So, art school was different for me. I didn't know what I was doing. So I had to learn a lot about drawing and design. And, when you're young and you're trying to screw your head on and you're like, is this really what it is? And what was, accessible through art was that I didn't have to be good at it, but I could work at it and get better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. Whereas like in the math, I couldn't cut the math.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter how hard I worked. I wasn't going to get it. Whereas like I could get better at drawing. I could get better at design. And I learned a lot from my professors at Alabama, and really enjoyed the time that I was there. I had started in photography and had a wonderful interim artist named Kathy Rick, and I have no idea where she is now, but she really
mm-hmm.
kind of put the can opener on my head and opened up my perception to like what it could be, what art could be, and what you could do with it. And like, that's so green, completely green. And like, oh, okay, I can do things. I can be creative. And so it was very empowering. And from that, I got introduced to another influential interim professor. Scott Miller was teaching printmaking at UA at that time, and I have no idea where he is now either. But he was a big influence. Just like recognized that I had desire, but I didn't have talent.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, we'll keep working at it. And of course, printmaking is terribly process oriented. And like, okay, well, so his work was very abstract and worked with the viscosity prints and like inks rejecting each other and kind of like the chemistry of ink. And so that was attractive that you could be kind of random. It didn't have to be a composition of precise arrangement. You could like hit it with a chainsaw. See how that looks. Print it again. Hit it with a chainsaw. Print it again. You're like, oh, okay, cool. Power tools. And then I found sculpture. And you're like, and this is already 4 years into school. So 2 more years of sculpture. The school was like, you got to go. Like you've been here 6.5 years. It's time to graduate. I'm like, but wait, there's more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on. And this is where I met Nathan. Nathan Goodson was my first sculpture professor. And I might have been one of 2 students, myself and another guy named Jason Lake, who we mountain biked together and made art together. And so Nathan was the one that introduced me to iron casting. And this was probably 1995 or 96.
Okay.
And being in Tuscaloosa, we came up to Tannehill one time and
mm-hmm.
met Johnny Williams and Rick Batten and kind of saw what was going on there. And I only did 2 iron pours in the time I was in college. And really didn't, we did a little cast metal, but I mean, I had no idea what I was seeing. It was just kind of like, just like everybody is when they have their first pour. They're, you're in your gear and you're like, what's happening? Oh yeah, grab that. Okay, go.
Yeah, that's actually something
and
I was going to comment on is everybody says their first pour. Some people are actually more embarrassed about it than I think they should be. Like, there's no shame in your first pour. You didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the more that we are open about that, then we may actually be more empathetic to the new kids on the block.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because they don't know. They don't, when you say ladle crew and they're like, what? Why? They don't understand that slag's up and you've botted the slagger. Like, we know that,
right.
But they're like, when you see a photographer or a videographer and they're filming the boring shit, because you're like, no, but this is where the action, it's like, I think that helping people realize, like, yeah, everybody doesn't know. It's so complex, but also that makes it more enticing.
Absolutely. And the time, I mean, it was only 5 people putting on the pour. Like Nathan was shouting there was a grad student there and myself and Jason Lake, and there was somebody else. But it wasn't like an iron pour now where you have 20 or 30 or 40 people. Like, it was very, very, premature. Like, it's just the beginning. Like, oh, why are we doing it? What are we doing? And in Nathan's usual style, it's just like, grab the bag, put it in there. Okay, sure, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we did. Yes, sir. Okay. That was back in the days when I had little dog Maggie, who was right there. I don't know if you ever had the pleasure of meeting Maggie.
No, but, I did not.
Nathan and Maggie were a pair, and it was a real treat to, not that I knew then, because I didn't, but now it was a real treat to learn from both of them. Maggie was a teacher too. So like at the end of my cast iron college experience, I made a few cast pieces, not very many, because I had already gotten, degreed hours in photography and degreed hours in printmaking, and the school was like, you're not going to stay for a degree in sculpture. You got to go. So like I had got to see one more iron pour, and this was one that Nathan invited Skip Van Houten to come to. Mm-hmm. So Skip and Dan Askew and Mark Lee, I think Mark Lee was part of that. But there were 3 or 4 people that came from Southern Miss, and all of a sudden our little iron pour went from 5 or 6 people to being 12, 15. Like, there were people there that knew what was going on. Like, oh, okay, I can stand back, kid. All right, what can I do to help? And so it was just really interesting to see that there was more to it than like, we're just doing this academic thing. We're there's people that have come for this. There are people that are into this. And of course, standing there watching Skip, the way he worked with Nathan and the group, it's just like in my mind, it's like, I got to go work with this guy. Mm-hmm. I got to work with him. I need to know where he's coming from and what he's doing, because I remember the moment. I remember it echoing. I can hardly remember the pour. Mm-hmm. But after college, I didn't have much of a plan, so I moved back to Indiana and got a job at a factory. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't a couple of years later that I was like, I'm going to go work with that guy. I'm going to do it. It hit me hard enough to stick. Yeah. And that's something, because I had no idea. Like, when school ended, I wasn't prepared. And so it was like, okay, well, I got a job at the Chrysler transmission factory for 2 years doing 850 parts a night. It was terrible.
Oh my gosh.
It was just, and I wish I could fix your transmission. I know how they work. I know how they go together. Well, I know how they go together. I don't know how they work. but it was something else. It was more money than I've ever made in my life. And it was soul sucking. Absolutely. Like, you're just like hanging out with everybody from 8th grade forever.
Yeah.
It's just, oh man. So, the stars had a bit of alignment for me because I actually got laid off.
Oh.
Like, we're sorry, sir. Yes, we're sorry. You can't work here anymore, but we're going to pay you. Union. Yep.
Huh.
We love the union. So I got paid for 9 months, 90% of my pay.
Okay.
While I toured the nation on a mountain bike and moved to Mississippi. And then they called me one day to come back to work at Chrysler. I'm like, I don't live there anymore. That was it. Now, could I have quit that job? It was hard. Like, everybody I went to high school with was there working. They got the boats and the jet skis and the houses and, like, walking away from that kind of money.
Yeah.
For an art career, So the divine intervention was, you're laid off.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, okay, that takes care of that decision. So I went on a little walkabout and came back and packed my stuff and moved to Mississippi, and actually got a teaching job at Southern Miss teaching photography because I had a degree.
Great.
And so I taught black and white photography and worked with Skip, worked in the foundry.
That's so cool. Okay. So you're in Mississippi and so how did that, like, did you just call him up and say, I'm moving and I've got this job, or did you get there and then say, like, how did that, I don't know why I'm so interested in that initial, I mean, did he remember you? Like, I just have so many nuanced, probably silly questions, but.
Well, if you ever meet Skip, he's the most generous and sweetest man going. He's a great guy. And so I called him up, and maybe he remembered me, maybe he didn't. But I said, I want to come work with you. And he said, yeah, okay, come on. And that's what I did. And I jumped in. It was just after Southern Miss had gotten a new facility, which was of Skip's endeavor, but all it was a pole barn with a bridge crane and power. There weren't any tools. There wasn't anything, but it was wide open space and a 2-ton bridge crane. And I was a non-traditional student, so I wasn't in school. I was like there. I was really serious about making art. I'm sure there's some, there's some stories about being too serious, Ira. And you might hear them, you might not. My friends might, let those go. But I was really focused on getting better because I felt like I didn't have what I needed coming out of undergrad. I stopped short. I need to learn more. And I'd already had the undergrad experience. And so I was like really intense on like, I'm going to make some stuff, which was great because there was people like Lance Malley and James Davis and Mark Lee and Jason Kimes, and Durant was around during those times. And it was just like, there were a lot of people. We had this 50 by 200 foot shed that was so full of people making artwork. There was one little single track path leading through all the projects. Like there was so much energy.
Yeah.
It was just amazing, like making big molds, trying crazy stuff, people working all hours of the night, people breaking into your locker to get cutoff discs because they want to keep working.
Yeah.
And like, I got you tomorrow, man.
Yeah.
And it was just, something. It was a great, uplifting experience. It wasn't, I mean, it would be easy to describe as competitive, but it really was more an uplifting, almost like we're doing it together experience. And, Skip was really generous with everybody got a turn to lead a pour. Like you are, Ira, you're in charge of running this pour, which means he wasn't going to do anything. Like you got to arrange everything. You got to get all the iron belts, you got to get the coke, you got to get the water, you got to do the whole shebang. And everybody got a turn to be the honcho, and everybody stepped up, because that's where we were at. It was just really a magical time. And we all went to New Jersey for the iron pour at the I guess it was a national conference or international, but we took Skip at the time was making his own Bessemer furnaces, right? He was trying to convert iron to steel, so he had made a couple of those, and ultimately we figured out that it was more performance than production.
Mm-hmm.
So we're there in front of the entire iron community, like blowing showers of sparks all over everyone, and it was really, really amazing to see so many different people coming together and all the effort. People hauling their furnaces across country. We had loaded all our stuff up there and drove the whole way. And, it's surprising how large and vast the community is.
Yeah.
Even though it's disparate and wide, like it comes together and there's a lot of spark.
Yeah. So how long were you? So you were teaching, but then also working on developing your own sculpture body of work and learning about iron. And so how long were you doing that?
That was about 2 years. It was, was that like, there's 3 years, 2000 to 2003, maybe, right in that range. And that's the thing, for folks that don't know, Skip Van Houten is an artist that did a lot of large castings, like really kind of well, I heard Remy describe it very well, how he described the 36-inch furnace that Skip had built. Like he was one of the able to scale up the idea once he had the bridge crane, once you have the means to move the mass. You can cast a whole lot of iron. So he started casting really big parts. And so he cast this truck. It's a Dodge truck that was on his property, and he molded the truck. It's cast iron 1-to-1, and so he was making these giant molds. Some of them were made out of cement, some of it was made out of sand that was backed with cement. There were a few blowouts at times while he was learning, like you pour 1,000 pounds in a mold and then that 1,000 pounds is going everywhere. So like there was a lot of learning curve that was happening for everybody simultaneously.
Yeah.
But it was, so that was the environment I was in. I mean, Skip was a steel fabricator and made some very elegant pieces. There's actually one here in Birmingham on UAB's campus. It's this giant top that's, probably 12 feet in diameter. It's steel with cast bronze and cast stone, but it's just a big top that could roll around. And, it's got all the elements of being, simple and playful yet dynamic and almost imposing. And that's kind of how Skip's work always struck me. And it's like, how did it do that? But so he's making big molds, so I got to make big molds. So I made a big mold and ended up making a 2,000-pound casting, an 8-foot dish that's installed at it's at the Frankfurt Josephine Sculpture Park in Frankfurt. And it was a lot of work. It was an impressive piece to do that much work. We had to like tap 1,000 pounds and hold it, and then tap another 1,000 pounds and put it on the gantry and pour simultaneously. And then you got this, 2,000-pound casting. What are you going to do with that?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun. That project I had to make. We were mixing so much sand that I made a mixer that I pulled behind my truck.
Yeah.
So you put 1,000 pounds of sand in the mixer, pour in all this chemistry, and then drive around in a circle. And then back it up underneath the crane, and then dump your sand out. Yeah, because we were doing it in 100-pound batches, and it was just, exhausting. You're like, there's a better way to do this. We can figure this out. So there was a lot of that kind of camaraderie. Where like, we can think our way out of this. We're gonna make something out of this.
Yeah.
There's a better way.
So I have encountered some of this very recently, actually, in southern Mississippi, and Rob and I call it oh shoot, what do I it's like farm ingenuity and engineering.
Oh yeah.
It's like these, like, if I don't know, there's something about this, the wits and the smarts and the ingenuity of farmers that I don't know if it's just because I wasn't exposed to it until recently, but it's like, you thought of that and you did it with, like, you can make anything out of nothing. That's insane. And sometimes it's a little scary, but it's still like, scary things can also be more inspiring than non-scary things. So that's what I have to say about like farm ingenuity and farm engineering. It sounds like an amazing environment to be in.
It was, and most of it was, Skip was, it was like, we figured out that we could get our sand delivered. We were going through so much sand, right? Everybody's making huge molds, and you're buying 100 pounds. Like, you could go and get sand, but you had to go and get it. And then we figured out they would deliver it to us if we had a hopper. And we're like, Skip, we're going to build a hopper. He's like, well, I don't think you will. You won't build that. And you're like, oh yeah. And so we built this hopper, and they would bring, the sand to school and pump it into the hopper. And of course the hopper was, only 5,000 pounds, and they deliver 8,000 pounds. So they spray the rest of the sand on the ground. We start scooping it up and using it immediately, but the real beauty of it all was like, you think you can, well, will you? But will you? You never said no. There was never a hesitation of no. It's like, it was always like, well, if you think you can do it, I want to see it. And it wasn't a dare. It was more or less like, well, if you said you're doing it, then you must be doing it, right? So we did a lot of that. And it shaped all of us immensely to, solve our problems and come up with the ways of creating our sculpture. And, even along the way, we developed aesthetic, through that. And that's the way he taught.
So where did you go after that?
After that, I went to Florida State and worked with Charles Hook and FSU in Tallahassee.
Oh, am I missing something in between? I don't know.
No, that's it.
So
that was the segue.
Meet Charles Hook when you were working with Skip, or did you know, like, because I guess I'm kind of assuming you knew what you were signing up for when you went there? When I went to Mississippi, I was like, I want to go to grad school, but I need a better portfolio. And so after building said portfolio, I had applied to several places, and FSU gave me the best deal. I even got into Georgia with Jimbo, and went and interviewed and was ready to pull the trigger, except, their process was like, well, you got to work that first year and then we'll give you money. And FSU was like, we'll give you money. I was like, taking the money. Yeah, take the deal. Because that's exactly right. I had to work. They gave me in-state tuition, thank God. But yeah, you don't get the assistantship. And not always. Some people did, but I didn't have, I don't know what I didn't have that's water under the bridge, but
I'm with you, sister.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving to Tallahassee, not really knowing what was going on. Was able to get a studio like on Mill Street. There are people from that time and era that have partied at Mill Street, probably had too much, whatever, and it was a good time. We mixed a lot of sand. We had a lot of fun, but it was kind of a different experience because I was outside of the graduate school. All the graduate artists had their studios at the warehouse, and everybody got their 10 by 10 cubicle, and all the printmakers and painters and drawers, and everybody's out there, and then the sculptors are stuck in the back. everybody's fussing about one, how hot it is. Two, like, why is it so noisy? What's that? Why do you keep grinding all the day?
Yeah.
I didn't have any of that experience. I spent my money on my own shop and, made the most of it. And grad school, for the most part, was awesome. It was interesting. I think it was, maybe you were talking with Kelly Ludeking, and he was talking about how his group of sculptors kind of turned into, had a reputation among the school. And at FSU, when I was there with Andy Light, Kate Tannerib, Adam Gary, we kind of did the same thing. We just started making stuff and going and doing stuff, and the rest of the faculty was like, wait, you haven't asked permission. And you're like, for what? We're making art. Get out of our way.
Yeah.
We built a giant furnace and, made it work. And then we put on a symposium. We invited a bunch of artists and had talks and did the whole thing. And there was a little bit of misconception by the other artists. They're like, well, you guys are just fucking around. And then, here we are sitting in the main auditorium that's packed to the gills. And there's a row of painting professors behind me that are like, wow, they really put it together. And you're like, what do you think we're doing? we're more serious than you are.
Yeah.
So we ruffled a few feathers because we were busy getting after it. And that's water under the bridge, miles back.
Yeah.
So that was I made some lifelong friends. I mean, as far as the advice goes for your young artists, the people you meet in your graduate experience are the ones that you'll carry the rest of your days.
Yeah.
And I hope most people have that experience. They're the people that they don't bullshit you. They tell you what's up with your work. They tell you what's up with your life. If they're genuine and real, then you got somebody, you spend so much time working and creating together. Like, that's the best thing you get out of graduate experience.
So yeah, since you're local to Birmingham, Adam Bodine.
Oh yeah.
So that's my grad school brother.
That's right. That's right. And you know that Mr. Doug Barton?
Yes. So he and Sarah Heath are like the older brother and sister. Like I didn't.
Right.
Oh man, because I have to have them both on. But like I always felt like I was I'm an oldest sibling. I'm the oldest, and I have a younger brother. But if I had to imagine what it would be like to be the like youngest kid, and you watch all your older siblings that are way more cooler and talented and like getting it and invested in popular. And I just thought that they were like, I was just so inspired by what they were doing. And also I wasn't in the sculpture program when I was in grad school. And so it was kind of like this weird, I was definitely accepted and encouraged and welcomed with open arms, but I was always a guest in their studio. Like I didn't have my own little area in the sculpture grads. I just, was like, you guys are so cool. And they, just totally, at the first iron pour, Doug and Sarah, and obviously Adam was there too, but they were like, come on, kid, get up on that tower. Here's a bucket. And I'm like, okay. Like, do I have to take my earrings out? You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't know. And like, I didn't know anything. And they were just so experienced and like, I keep saying this, but like cool, and calm and just, they both have so much experience in iron going into grad school. And then what they learned from Jimbo was like on top of that. And so, yeah, I just like, it was a great place to be like a little kid of the family, because I think that I had to earn their respect. But once I did, that was it. Like because I remember there was one, like the first couple of castings I did, I cast these like hand imprints. I had taken clay and like squeezed the clay, and then I cast them in iron. And then I made these a necklace, and I also made a pair of bracelets that you had to hold the weight, because if you let go, it would drop and then it would choke your neck. I was dealing with some stuff in grad school. Like, that's water under the bridge, but it was the same with the bracelets. It was like a slip connection. And so you had to hold it, or if you didn't, if you dropped it, then it would like constrict your wrist. Just like a lot of constricting stuff and themes like feeling trapped. And, because I felt like I was at the time as a child, I was like 23, 24 at the time. So now looking back, I'm like, I don't know, but it was, and so I finished this casting in my jewelry studio with my flex shaft. And I can't remember what I was doing, but I showed it to Doug and he was like, that's the best finish I've ever seen on cast iron. And because it was like in all of the little intricacies that you can get with like a jeweler's flex shaft and tools. And I've been using jeweler's flex shaft tools since I was like 16. And I remember being like, maybe there is a place for me in this, like the fact that that he was impressed. I was like, okay. So anyway, so that's but Adam Bodine, it's a great comfort to me that every 2 years I get to go and we can reconnect, because, we went through a lot together.
Hey, don't be a stranger. Come on.
I know. No, I know you too. And, and actually we can talk about maybe in the after show, like when I first met you and I was like, who is that guy on the front end? You were like on a front end load. Well, spoiler alert, but
we'll get to that.
Yeah. But, Adam, Doug, Sarah, like, definitely like my ride or die crew. Like, I have so many good memories, but also like, Adam and I went through the kind of death of the UGA iron program together.
Right.
So,
there's a lot of that going around.
Yeah.
Well, let me pick it up there, because in my experience, I finished graduate school and then got a job at Florida State at their wonderful anomaly, the Master Craftsman program.
Mm-hmm.
And this program is still in existence, but it was, they were calling this 2006. It was a combination of art and entrepreneurship, and using all them buzzwords. But a particular alumni had come back and carved out a space within the university to make what the university wanted, with artists and teach the students simultaneously. So if the university wanted a stained glass window, instead of hiring somebody out, they sent it to the Master Craftsman. So the Master Craftsman became this whole atelier design, where you had student volunteers. There were some courses, mostly in business. And then there was a staff of artists that worked there making whatever the school wanted. So we made cast glass, we did cast metals, we did statuary, we did trophies and awards, just all sorts of stuff, everything, anything. And it was really an innovative program. Now, its detriment was that it was never accepted by the academic communities, being like the art department hated it. Like, that's not right. And so unfortunately, rather than being a fully integrated program into the school, it was kind of a redheaded step sibling that was on the side. But the guy that ran it, who was okay, he was all right. He spoke a lot of truth about, like, you need to know how to do business.
Yeah.
I want to teach students how to, like, hey, this is how you make a bid. This is how you prepare your, how you look for jobs. This is how you sell yourself. And so I got on there and started working in the shop. And then eventually, it wasn't long, I was managing the shop. And so I had a crew of 8 artists under me and 2 administrators. And we were like bringing in the jobs and cranking out the work. And we were, on top of that, we were selling cast iron to the university. We were selling, like, hey, let's do this legacy walk where, you got this 1.5 mile walk around campus and there's these different areas, and we'll make cast iron like emblems to go on the sidewalk. So this was a way for us to take that big 24-inch cupola we built and keep it running.
Yeah.
And so we were mixing sand and had the hand-drawn gantry crane. And, we did a couple of pours out there in excess of 5 tons, like just ridiculous amounts of iron. But short of a building, a structure covering it all, I mean, we had a bobcat, and we had a sand muller, and we had almost everything to where it was almost easy.
Yeah.
It was almost easy. It was still a lot of work. We were still busting our iron, but it was big cupola, so you only had, pieces like this,
Yeah.
Cleanup was a snap. Like we had the bobcat out there, you just no more of this like all day hangover cleanup. But we cast a lot of iron. We had a lot of fun doing it too. Had a pretty great crew of different people, and it was interesting in my experience because I kind of, I'd help build the furnace, kind of led that project, and built the gantry, and then got people on board with like, you guys want to buy cast iron, we want to cast this iron, you want to buy it. So we found a funding stream, and ultimately I kind of became more of a circus leader. Like my buddy Charlie Scott Smith and Steve Torres and these other folks, they're the ones running the furnace. Like I didn't have anything to do with it anymore. I was making sure that the donors that were giving the money for the event were taken care of, and making sure the parking was taken care of, and talking to the media, and like just kind of the out front. And I would show up and like run the chain hoist.
Yeah.
That's an easy job, but as far as like doing the details of pouring the metal, like you got to stand back and let the talent work. You can't do it all. So, I kind of, in some ways, migrated over to more of an administrative position, and like, yeah, sure, I'd make art and cast art and do that stuff, but I didn't have to be the guy that was in charge of it all the time. And it's like, you guys got it. I don't even have to worry about it. You're going to make that hot. So, we had some great times and poured a lot of hot iron. And that went on, in my life for about 6 or 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I got into running my own studio more. Started doing a lot of cast concrete, a lot of cast terrazzo. We had done a terrazzo project at the Master Craftsman. So terrazzo is, decorative concrete where you use glass instead of stone, and then you polish the surface. You see it a lot in airports. It's a great floor covering, very popular in Florida. You can use seashells. So I started a company doing terrazzo countertops, and that was pretty good for several years. It wasn't quite enough to make it. I was just making it. I was always hoping for, the boutique hotel to come along and be like, we need 30 units, but like trying to figure out how to make enough money to stay alive, because most of it was just kind of like bouncing across the bottom.
Yeah.
Tallahassee isn't a very big place.
Mm-hmm.
You want to make money doing something, go someplace where the people are, where there's shit happening. And then during that time, I was so fortunate to be selected to be the resident artist at the Metal Museum and their founder.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, Laura, this is, and for the crowd, this is where Laura and I met all those many years ago. But it is such an honor to be part of their collection. Like it is the pinnacle of my professional career to have my artwork on display, to have thousands of people see it and to consider it if they happen to notice it. But it is really, they treated me so well and continue to do so. And it's just such an honor to be part of that organization, even at a distance, to have them continue to showcase my work, because it was, they didn't put any requisites on me. They said, what do you want to do? Okay, you can do it. And of course, you've been to the museum, you see what is there and you see what I did. And like, I picked up a piece of real estate, like, they didn't say no. They were like, we believe in your vision. And it's just, I will always be super honored to be included with such a caliber organization. Um, so,
Yeah.
it was a great experience. Not only did I get to make great art, I got to meet Miss Laura Mullins and who's the German guy that we hung out with, the blacksmith, the big dude,
oh
the
my
snitching
gosh.
Dubin.
He's so famous and I can't remember his name because I'm not a
He
blacksmith.
is.
Oh my gosh.
He was a great
I
guy,
used to know
man.
it.
He was so much fun. Yeah.
Oh
On the Klaus.
yeah, was it Klaus Burgel? Was it?
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I had.
Right.
He was
that
a great guy.
Dang, was it it wasn't Repair Days then. It was the Forging on the River.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they made the bench, the really kind of stylish one that's over, on the across from my piece.
Yeah, it's wild because I think that's one of those. I mean, we experience things and don't really realize what we're watching all the time. And like, I know we already talked about it with iron pouring and like your first iron pour, you're like, how is the metal coming out? But they're putting rocks in. I don't get it. But that's another thing. Like I saw all those blacksmiths like doing all that forge welding and like hitting for each. And that was the first time I'd ever seen something like that. Like, I mean, what a wild, I didn't even know what I was seeing. So the Metal Museum is like no other place. I mean, there's many places like Sloss and Sloss Metal Arts and Birmingham, Alabama is like no other place. It's like comparing apples to oranges. It's just like they're all in their own league, but we're all in the same river or something. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like on the podcast, my analogies get really wild, but yeah. So it wasn't even Repair Days. It was the Forging on the River.
It was Forging on the River. Yeah.
And you had just arrived, I feel like 2 days before or something.
Yeah. I hadn't been there long.
And they were like, surprise, there's going to be this event. And and I showed up because I knew that there was going to be an iron pour.
Right.
And thank God that you were there to run the furnace.
Yeah, I mean, we did it. It was something. I can't even remember the furnace we ran.
It was the old one.
There've been a lot.
Like some blacksmiths had made. Yeah, it's not the furnace that James runs now. He built his own pristine Priscilla. Now, but
right. Yeah, it ran fine. We did all right. I do remember trying to find bentonite in Memphis, like running around trying to find clay so we could make good bots.
Yeah.
But that was a great time. Such an amazing experience. And I mean, as far as like being kind of given carte blanche to the foundry and go and make your work and be part of our community and pitch our story. But also like, you have a vision, let's see it. So that was really gratifying. And it was something that helped springboard me to another residency at SAW, where I got to go up there for 4 months and be a fellow, which is an amazing experience if you get the chance to apply for the not the peon and not the resident artist, but go for the fellow. Like, they were running me off the job. Like, hey, I'll help you guys dig these ditches. I'm like, no, go work on your art. Okay.
Good. Yeah, that's a good problem to have. Like, all right.
It's a hard. Well, I mean, as much as iron casting is such a team sport, and you're like, oh, you see people doing stuff. I want to, it's not only labor, but it's entertainment. It's teamwork, and they're like, oh, but this is not your job. Your job is to be creative. And you're like, oh, well, I guess I'll go sketch. And you go work, you go do your thing, but it was, the allure of, like, we're going to raise this barn together. Oh, not you. Sorry. But I met so many great people at that experience and saw it's such a magical place, being there for 4 or 5 months. I think the there is a meteor shower that occurs that time of year, the Leonoids or the Pleiades or whatever. But like there was a period of time where every night you went out and there were shooting stars, just like right in your face, kind of shooting stars. And you're like, where am I? This is a magical place. This is, there's art everywhere. There's great people everywhere. It was a great time and a great experience to get to have. And I hope to get back up there soon. So in the big cycle and circle of things, after I got back from doing all that stuff, I did another art project right at 2016, which didn't have much of anything to do with iron, but I was on the road for 4 months, and that was quite an experience. And then after that, I got the residency at Sloss and moved to Birmingham, and have been here ever since.
And I just actually was thinking about it when you were talking about SAW. I was thinking, but you had been to Sloss and the national conference before? Like you must have gone to Sloss with like Skip or with Florida State.
Yeah. Well, actually with Nathan in like 1996 or 97. Yeah. He brought us up here for one of the first gatherings, and, there was only a couple of furnaces in the shed. Some of them were outside.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was seeing. I was kind of there hanging out in my shorts, like, huh, cool. Yeah. What's this? No idea.
Yeah.
And I might even made a scratch box, just to get a souvenir. I do remember coming to the conference in 1999 that didn't happen. A group of us from Southern Miss drove up, and there was supposed to be a conference, but it didn't materialize for some reason or another. Like, but there were some other people that showed up. There was a small band of about 20 folks who thought there was a conference this weekend, and we even brought some homemade beer and hanging out, watch one iron pour, and go back to Mississippi. It was a good time.
Yeah, they always are, even if you show up and the conference isn't happening. That's a funny story. I haven't heard that one before.
Well, sometimes stuff gets busy. I mean, I think the national conference was moving around at the time, and it wasn't necessarily something that is as it is now, where Sloss is like, yes, let's make this the destination because it's easy and it makes sense, and of course, it can be shared. But right now, like, come to Sloss every 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, Sloss has such a really big impact on almost everybody that I talk to, and people that I haven't even interviewed yet. It just really, I think sometimes it solidifies for people like, oh, this is, like when you were talking about when Nathan invited Skip and you realized, oh, this is something that people actually do and are wicked passionate about. I think that Sloss, when especially coming from so I stumbled into this iron program at the University of Georgia with Jimbo, but I didn't really know. I didn't get it. I definitely didn't. I knew that other people had poured. Like there was another student who was a graduate student with me who had come from Alfred. And so he had poured with Coral before. And so I knew all of these other people were talking about it. Like Adam had worked at Sloss before coming to UGA. And so, so they were all like doing all this like iron talk and stuff. And I was just in the foundry class as a first year grad. Like, I mean, I've done centrifugal casting with sterling silver. You know what I mean? Like I haven't heard. And so then I think I had just missed the 2009 conference, would have been in the spring, but I didn't start at UGA as a grad until the fall of 2009. And so it wasn't until 2011 we went, Jimbo brought the furnace, Mother's Little Helper, and ran it under the shed. But that was like the first time we had an invitational. Actually, I kind of take a little bit of it back because we had an invitational where people had come. So I saw people come to UGA for iron casting, but going to Sloss, and just seeing the vast, like, and seeing the trailers. That's like one thing I want to make like a coffee table book of trailers of
Oh yeah.
furnaces, right?
Right. What kind of junk you got?
Like just like photos, like beautiful photos of like hauling a trailer, like a gooseneck trailer of like what's on there, your cupola, like is it a split stack, how is it loaded, what do you got for ladles, like is your tower just like a staircase to heaven? Like I love that shit so much. Like when you see people pull into Sloss with a trailer, I like it's almost like I just anyways, that's a little
That's
like,
right. How many spares do you have?
yeah.
2 spares? 3 spares? You might need them.
I mean, maybe if you're smart. And that's something like sometimes I'll be driving and I'll see a trailer with something that's like industrial looking, like I don't quite know what it is. And I'm like, I've never seen a furnace. Like as I'm driving, like organically, I've never stumbled across anybody, but I would love to, because I kind of wonder, like, what do people think when they see our what we're hauling? You know, it's a very like I just
scrappers. Look at those scrappers.
I maybe or yeah, it just probably depends on how you load it up and what your furnace looks like, and like what is that? They must be going to the circus because
that's right.
Anyway, so enough about me. I'm trying to think if there's like what part of the like if there's a thread that I want to catch back onto for your story. But so it's like you were
to give the full story. I was offered an opportunity to apprentice with a CNC operator. So there was a fellow that moved to Birmingham with his wife, and he had a CNC machine, and he needed some help, and so I started helping him. And great guy, really wonderful dude, very giving, showed me everything. I'd kind of dabbled with it in other places in my career along the way. And a little bit of self-taught, but here was an opportunity to really learn like machine operation, software operation, you know, and I apprenticed with him for about 1.5 years. And then he moved away. Him and his wife moved back to California, and the phone kept ringing. Like there was just more jobs, you know, there was more people that needed stuff done on the router. And it was like, you know what? This is a good idea. I like this. And so, you know, I took the opportunity to get out of the foundry and get into the wood shop. And so I took all my savings and got a loan and bought a machine and have been running a router since 2019. And with that, it's been a lot of work. I make all sorts of stuff, anything from signs to custom cut parts to furniture. But it was enough opportunity for me to buy my own building. So now I have my own shop in Birmingham where my router is set up. And, you know, there is some dreams coming true as far as like, you know, I have my own space.
Yeah.
I have a place where I have a fairly consistent revenue stream. And so I have ambitions to like kind of point my creativity back, or point my energy back towards creativity. You know, it takes a long time to kind of get everything set up and ducks in a row. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, with all the jobs that you have and the things you do, like there's a small window where you get to be creative and make what you want. Lots of ideas, lots of like, I really want to make this. But, you know, resources and opportunity are fleeting. And so now I am kind of putting a few pieces in place where I get the chance to be, you know, make things that are less oriented towards profitability.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to stay in the game, you got to figure out how you're going to finance it.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of different ways to do it, but, you know, most of all, it's, you know, you got to work, you got to find what people want and make it for them. And that was the interesting thing about, like, I was thinking about this CNC thing, and I would talk to people in Birmingham, be like, yeah, I work at Sloss. And like, yeah, you work at Sloss. Yeah. And I'd be like, hey, I do CNC work. And they're like, really? Oh, CNC, I saw that on the computer. I saw that on television. That's so amazing. And it's like, huh. I am so amazingly passionate about cast iron, which is, 600-year-old technology.
Yeah.
But nobody else is. I mean, we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to tell somebody that you're doing CNC, then all of a sudden everybody's like, there's a whole lot bigger group of people that are like, oh, you do what? I can get what from you? And the nice part is that it lends itself back to casting. Like the stuff that I can make on the router is to put into, in some ways the stuff that I can make production grade stuff that you take to the foundry and bang it out.
Yeah.
But the combination now, so I'm approaching midlife. The opportunity is like, I have this router and I have this foundry that I work at. And I can start meshing a layer of creativity, in a way that I've been working towards for, a couple of decades now. So, I have not produced a lot creatively. I've been more working on the infrastructure to do so going forward. So, still chipping away at it.
Yeah. So with all that being said, what do you have that's hot on the horizon?
There's a lot to be excited about, especially with having a new space. Like there's some infrastructure building out an office. Instead of using my lovely guest room as an office, I can have an office. Mm-hmm. The prospect of getting a renter, because I have so much space, I could have somebody else working in that space. So then that changes the financial dynamic to where I can, really be just focusing on art,
Yeah.
Some of that stuff is, it's a little grown up. You don't think about it when you're 20, but if you get the chance to leverage your position into a better spot through your assets, then all of a sudden it's like, great, I don't have to worry about paying my bills because I got them doing it. Now I can make art. Now I can make things that don't turn a profit. I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy working with the architects in Birmingham, the people that I've met with the router stuff. It's interesting to be able to apply a whole career of sculpture to a commercial field. Because when architects kind of realize that you're not just, pushing your way through it, you're not just, you're paying attention to detail and you have a wide array of skill sets and you're on top of your game. They treat you differently. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know what you're into. And so the opportunity, they want to know your insight to their project so they can present you with something. And then I get to flash my creativity in a way. It's like, what about this? And they're like, we love it. And you're like, great. Because then it's already built into the budget. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
So that's exciting. The idea of being able to collaborate in a professional setting where, you might start with a big number, but you still end with a number. You're not working, you're not just putting money into your portfolio. Mm-hmm. Still a good thing to do. But, my experience at the Master Craftsman has really made me business based. Fortunately, it's, I've had a few businesses and I've never been in it for making a ton of money. Just making enough is good by me. But making enough to where you can start being creative again. It seems to be the next goal.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I kind of want to touch on to your point. I remember I guess when I was a kid, and they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? All of this, what's your goal? What's your, the house with the white picket fence and lots of money so that you can go on vacations and retire early and all of that. Just kind of like from my environment, my parents God bless them for supporting me, and my mother for continuing to support me in all of my endeavors, even though she might not really understand what I'm doing. She knows that I'm happy. And I think that that's something that I was missed, I think, was like, it's okay. You can't be, like you were talking about earlier, scraping bottom, because that's not like for me, it's like not the best for mental health, just speaking from personal experience. Like, you don't want to be scraping the bottom, but you don't have to. Sometimes the most wealthy people are not the happiest, it's it's like how I feel like, almost like, what do you have to do to be happy, but also be able to pay your bills and have a little bit of money to support your happiness? So it's like, as long as I can afford to go floating on the river and go to iron pores, and see my family, I think that that's success. And so I feel like your story is kind of along the lines, or like in the same tune as kind of like finding what you found to be defined as happiness for yourself. And now where are you going with that, what you've built? And that's really inspiring to hear about. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there was something I came across at the Master Craftsman where it's like, there was an economist's analysis of success. And there's basically two tracks, right? So you take, Mozart, right? Young prodigy. The guy goes up and goes down.
Yeah.
You take Beethoven, long, slow ascending, and his career, took his whole lifetime. I'm on that track. It's a long journey. And, some people, it's easy to be like, let's go. And you get up there, and then what do you do? Where do you go from there? It might work for some people. There are some amazingly talented folks out there that can handle it, manage it, want it. I'm happy to grow slow.
Yeah.
And just keep growing into it. And hopefully there's enough opportunity to grow into something that's even better than what I want it to be. Like, I'm pretty sure I can get what I want, but if sometimes you get what you need.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. On that note, can I ask you officially for some advice to me, or to, up and coming casters, or maybe fellow community members, or just like advice?
Yeah, there's a lot. I could go on for a while, but let me. I would say for young folks, allow your talent to be used. Like, sell yourself, sell your talent. The times that I went through art school was very much about, like, your art is unique and it's amazing and that's what you should do. But that didn't pay the bills. Like, self-expression is great, but that's more applicable to self-therapy, right? For people coming through art school now, like, you've got skills you're being trained with. Go make money with that. Go meet people, go get better at what you do. Keep your other thing going, your own thing, but kind of the whole, like, my art is the most amazing and I don't know why anybody ever buys it. Like, join the club. Welcome to the family. Right? Hey, don't be afraid to, take your talent and apply it towards a profitable means, because there are a lot of people in the world that can't paint, can't draw, can't sculpt, can't, load a trailer, can't do a lot of stuff that you can do. And if you're willing to just be like, oh yeah, I can weld that up for you, or I can paint that for you, you take those resources and you put them towards your bigger goals. It's not something that's really popular in the educational paradigm. People call it selling out, but I haven't seen anybody turn down a check yet. Right? Take a check. And those resources go to the next thing. It's not any different than getting a grant. You got to work for it. So that's my advice to young people. My advice for the community is forgive. Just forgive. Just let it go. Homegirl's right. Water under the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Amen, brother. Whew, amen.
Yeah. Well, the best part about being in the cast iron community is the community.
Yes.
Like, I do like to call it the National NCCIECA and G, National Cast Iron Conference on Contemporary Practice and Gossip. It's always in gossip because we're such a small group and we're all tied together, and it's like we all hear it. Yeah. And it's like, is anybody really out there trying to like take all the iron from somebody else? No, we're all trying our best to help each other get forward.
Yes.
I can't believe they didn't clean up. You're like, you know what? Maybe their mom died. Like steady is, So anyway, that's the community. Let's love each other. To the young people, hustle, hustle, hustle.
And I like to use this analogy. I heard it from somewhere else, but let me see if I can say it right. Rising tides raise all ships.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Unless your commode's backed up, then you got a problem. Oh, you said ships. Ships. I'm sorry. I thought you said something else.
I can't tell if you're joking or if you're serious. Jeez. Well, on that note, folks, you can tell how much fun Ira and I are going to have over in the after show. So if you're not signed up for Patreon and you're not getting these after shows, like, what are you missing out on? I mean, I know what you're missing out on. Ira knows what you're missing out on, but come on over, And I'll tell you more about that in my outro, and Ira doesn't have to sit through it because I'm sure he listens to it enough on the episodes. But for the public audience, Ira, do you want to talk about I was going to say goodbye to them, but usually I give a little teaser about what we're going to talk about in the after show. So I have my little thing that I'm going to tell you as soon as we get over there. But if you have something, because some people come on the show as guests and they know the game. They already have the story picked out, but I can prompt you with, we've got questions. You need to be triggered.
I mean, I can come up with a story. There's a few. There's a couple of good ones. What your list had cited, like most dangerous thing I've seen. I do have a good story about superheroes. Don't always wear capes, but they do wear leathers.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
All right, we'll tease with that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, and there may be more because we'll see how long it takes for us to get tired of each other. I don't know.
So, Laura, on the outtake, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you so much for putting this together. It's really amazing. I know everybody is listening and starting to listen. I certainly have been chatting with some folks about what they hear on your podcast. So keep up the great work. It's really a great service. We got enough of a community to have somebody that wants to amplify our voices. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast and being willing to let me, pick at your past. And I already have learned so much more than I knew. Like, this is more than I knew about you before, but I've also learned more from you in just this short amount of time. So for that, thank you.
Thank you for letting me share.
Let's go on over to the after show. All right, everybody. If we don't see you at the after show, I hope to see you over there soon, but we'll talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Ira's willingness and ability to ride the waves of experiences in his life has taught me a great deal about how attitude is key to dealing with each situation as it comes. His journey demonstrates that passion and hard work are just as important as love and respect for others as we navigate through this life. Ira, obviously, thank you for letting me interview you and blah, 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 all that, the whole deal. But also, thank you for always seeing the good in me and encouraging my potential. When I first met you, which was about 10 years ago, I honestly was having kind of a tough time with life, as we all go through phases. And I think you saw that, and you've always, without question, accepted me for who I am, and you consistently acknowledge that I am capable of a great deal more than I think is possible, and you hold me to that high standard, and I will do my best to rise to the occasion, I promise. Thank you for everything that you have invested in me, and I'm honored that you continue to do so. I treasure your friendship an unbelievable amount, and I hope to make you proud as I continue to traverse through life and work on this passion project of the podcast Iron. If you want to learn more about Ira and his art, you can visit his website, which is irahillsculpture.com, or you can follow him on Instagram at EYER8ARTS, and that's pronounced Irate Arts. Ira's current business with the router also has an Instagram account, which is Crescent CNC. But he told me that everything that's posted on this business account also gets posted through the personal account. But I just wanted to give you both options and let you know they're out there. A big shout out and thanks to our top supporter, Sloss Metal Arts, as well as our other supporters over on Patreon. I really appreciate all of your contributions that help me afford the online hosting of the audio files for the podcast Iron. So let me tell y'all over on Patreon, this week's after show, get excited because Ira is a blast as he tells tales of Iron heroes and recounts some of his other most memorable moments in Iron. If you're listening and you also want access to this after show and the after show from every episode, go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/podcastiron. There you can choose a contribution level that fits within your budget. And Patreon supporters at every level get access to the after show from each episode. So this is just an extra 15 to 20 minutes, sometimes longer, with the show's guest where we talk a little more candidly and share at least one more story. So for as low as $1 a month, you can show your support to the show and get this extra content. But if you don't have it in the budget to support the podcast Iron on Patreon, I understand. Instead, if you could please share this podcast with someone that you think would be interested in listening or watching, and I'll appreciate that just as much. Anything and everything helps, and for that I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. If you happen to be watching the show on YouTube, please consider subscribing to the Podcast Iron channel. This way you can set up notifications for when every episode goes live, but also I'm working towards 100 subscribers because reaching that milestone will allow me to change the channel URL from this, I've been assigned this random arrangement of numbers and letters and it makes no sense and it's hard to tell people what it is. But I have this big dream that someday I'll be able to have the youtube.com/podcastiron so that I can say it and it's more memorable. So for those of you who have already subscribed, thank you for helping me start to make this dream a reality. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me at thepodcastiron@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'm sending you all my love always, and I can't wait to share the next episode with you. I'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.